Hi, this is Kylie. Welcome to my studio. So the March prompt for the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group is creative envelopes, and you'll find a link to the group in the description box below. So I am going to show 3 very easy ways to make envelopes. All you need is some scissors and some glue of some description. You don't even need a ruler, albeit I will show you a couple of measurements just for your information. So you can basically use any kind of paper, printed paper from a pad, deli paper, vellum, parchment, whatever you want to use, simple printer paper, book pages, painted pages, maps, even old envelopes you could make into smaller envelopes if you wanted. So I'm just going to show you a few examples, but I'm going to start by simply using some previously tea-dyed paper. So these were just offcuts from other pages, and I thought they'd be good just to use for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to take this first bit, and this piece is more or less square. Now, just to show you, it's roughly just under 15 centimetres by almost 15. It wasn't quite square, but I'm just going to keep it at this. I'm not going to change it anyway. And that's around about 5 3/4, there or thereabouts. But as I say, you can use any size. Now, if you want to know how to quickly square a paper, if you don't have a ruler or anything, just take one corner, fold it up so your 2 sides meet, and then fold down that other bit and cut along that line, and that will more or less give you a square, give or take a tiny little bit here or there. So decide which side you want as your inside and which you want to go to the outside, and have it inside facing up. Now you want to put your paper so it looks as if it's a diamond. And all I'm doing is I'm going to fold in from one side, and then I'm going to try and more or less match that on the other side. Now this is where if your paper's not quite square, it might not meet up entirely. But if you're going for perfection, then of course you would measure it clearly, measure it carefully, but I'm just going for something that's quick and easy to make. So I've then folded the bottom section up, and then I'm folding the top section down. And I'm just pushing those folds just down with my fingers and then running over it with my nail just to get a sharper line. And that's basically it. Now you will see when it's folded there are little triangles in the corner. That one on the top left, it's not there just because, I wasn't folding it entirely accurately. But all I'm going to do is to cut those little triangles out. Now this isn't absolutely essential, but all it means is when you go to close your envelope, it will just give a neater fit to it. But as I say, it's not essential. So just cutting those out. And as I say, if there'd been one there, you would cut that out as well. So I like to fold that edge in. You could cut it off. I just think it's a little bit neater. It makes the envelope slightly more robust if you're putting things in and out a lot. Now, if your envelope isn't sitting entirely correct, you could at this stage just start to move some of those lines about until you get it to the point where you think that it's right for you. So I'm just going to put a little dab of glue. You could use a glue stick if the paper's not too heavy. You could use double-sided tape. This is just simply the glue that I had to hand today. So I've glued that in place. Now I'm just going to glue down these little bits. You just need to be careful that no glue goes really off the little flaps there, otherwise you might end up gluing your envelope shut, and I've done that on occasion. And that is basically the envelope. So very simple, very straightforward. So I'll now do the second style. So again, decide which is your inside and which is your outside, and have the inside facing up the way. Now if I was folding into thirds, I'd be doing it something like that, but what I want to do is to take that bottom piece and fold it just beyond the 2/3 level. You could make it a smaller flap on top if you wanted. And then just folding the top flap down, and again just pushing the lines into place with my fingers and then running along it with my nails so that I have a nice crease line there that I can see when it comes to cutting and folding again. From the side, I'm going to fold this in on this side, and again just to show you, that's about half an inch I've got there, and I think it's just under 1.5 centimetres. But you know, I'm just eyeballing it, I'm not looking to make it accurate, but you could if you wanted. So just folding the other side in, trying to get it roughly the same size. Same process though of just smoothing the sides down with my hands, and then I'll go over it with my nails. So now I have all my fold lines in place. You could basically glue the bottom flap to the centre piece of that there, and that would be absolutely fine. But I'm going to cut a bit more out just to make it neater. So where that fold line is on the right hand side there, I'm just going to cut to the inside edge of that, and it's really just a tiny piece in from that fold, but basically I'm aiming to hit then the point where the folds meet. So the closer I get to the top, the more I'm trying to bring it in towards that line. But to be honest, if it doesn't quite hit it, it's not going to be seen. I'm then going to angle the inside flap just a little bit. So there's my line, there's where I'm aiming for, and I'm just going to angle that a little bit. And again, that just means that when it comes to gluing it down, when it's all in place, it will just sit a little bit better. So now on the left hand side, just cutting up there again, aiming for that centre point, the point where the lines meet, and then angling that. So you can do a check at this point. When you fold that up, you can see if it neatly meets. And if there's any issue, you can just trim a little bit off. And that's all I'm doing here, just cutting off a tiny slither, just so that you won't see the overhang between the two pieces. And I'm just going to snip that out. I did go to pull it, but I could have ended up ripping the paper there. I'm then going to the top, and I'm going to do something very similar here. Now you can angle the top of your envelope as you want. I'm just doing a very small angle to it. So just starting a little bit further in than I did on the bottom, and again going to where the lines meet. And again, just angling the internal flap so that when it comes to gluing it, it will sit neatly. And there we have the basic envelope shape. Now I do a little bit of neatening up there just because one side wasn't quite the same as the other. In truth, it would not have mattered, and it probably wouldn't have been seen. Now that could be glued there as is, but again, I like to just bend that down. As I say, it just makes it a little bit more robust if you're putting things in and out of an envelope that's perhaps in a journal lot. You could just cut along there if you wanted that as well, or, as I'm doing, just a bit of glue. And I'm just going to smooth that out with my finger and then fold that into place. And I'm just going to use that bit of excess glue on one of the flaps. And then again, just smoothing out with my finger. I'm trying not to get too much glue on here. And there we have the second style of envelope. Now, as I said before, you could shape that top. You can make it a more pronounced angle on it if you wanted. But two similar envelopes in terms of the paper used, and yet quite different in terms of their construction. Now this one is the easiest of all. So I'm just going to fold that up just beyond the 2/3 point. fold the top down. I will angle the top ever so slightly, the top flap. It could be left as is, it could be angled more, but I'm just cutting out a very small triangle there, and that will be the flap of my envelope. Now again, you could fold that inside edge down if you wanted. On this occasion, I just leave it, and all I'm going to do is to glue the sides into place. And just a little bit of glue. Now, obviously, this makes the internal piece just slightly smaller, and you would want to make sure that glue's dry before you put anything in. But, you know, you could use double-sided tape, glue stick, glue, anything at all that's going to stick these. So those are basically the 3 types of envelopes, and I use these styles over and over. I like to add envelopes into my journals, or to include in Happy Mail, to put artist trading cards in, or anything of that sort. So here are some that I made out of deli paper, so they have a bit of a look of faux glassine, and I actually did a video before on making faux glassine pockets and envelopes, and I'll put a link to that above, below in the description box, and indeed I'll link it at the end of this video. Now I was trying to be careful here because the glue wasn't entirely dry, and I also noticed that I had a little bit glue on the inside where it was sticking together, so I'm just very gently prising that apart. But I think these are very nice as well. And what I'll do next is I'm going to put it on a little bit faster, because I'm just going to run through the instructions again. But obviously if you want to watch this over, you could, and at less speed, at normal speed, you can just go back to that earlier section. So I'm just going to take this piece of paper. It's roughly 6 by 6. It was actually just a little bit smaller than that, and it wasn't entirely square either. So again, I've put it in the kind of diamond shape, just showing you there that the piece that I folded in is about 2 inches. I could have made it less than that. I've eyeballed it, but there I've got roughly 2 inches again. Just going to show you there, it's just short of 6 inches, it's about 5 3/4. You see that side was longer, so although it was supposed to be, or labelled as I think a 6 by 6 pad, it wasn't quite that. I think this pad was from B&M, which is a shop here in the UK, and I got this a while ago. So just folding this all together in a similar way. Folding in the sides first, then the bottom, then the top, and then just cutting out those little triangles, just to get that slightly neater finish. I'll fold in that piece again, just because that's what I like to do. Glue that in place. And then I'll glue down those internal flaps. Bring the bottom up towards them, rubbing off a little bit of glue there. And there we have the envelope, and I like that. That's quite a nice grungy looking paper. So here's one with a nice kind of foiled pattern on it, and again just doing the very same here. I won't glue this one, it's just to show you the folds again. So folding from the sides, trying to get it more or less even, just showing you there that you can fold the paper that way, just roughly, and you would see whether or not it's more or less in the right kind of shape and size. If you need, use your scissors just to help fold it down there. So I have a tiny scrap here. I'm just going to trim this up on my paper trimmer. Just going to use as much of this as possible. So this is a really good way to use your scraps. And you know, with these sort of envelopes, you can make them as big as you want or as small as you want. You could use 12 by 12 paper, any size at all. So just folding that up past the 2/3, putting a nice line in. This is a thicker, heavier paper, so just leaning a little bit heavier on it. Folding the top down and then folding the sides in. trying to get roughly the same size on each side. And you'll see in a moment that I actually use the back of my scissors in this case just to get the neat line in. You could use a bone folder or anything like that. Now it's a little bit more difficult to see where I'm cutting, but again, just to the inside of the fold line, taking it up to the corner where the two lines meet, and again on this side, angling it, that inside flap, and then going to the top. This time I cut both sides before doing the little flap, the little angled bit on the flap. Now this is a slightly heavier paper, so it will need a little bit more glue. You could use a circle punch, put half circle in that if you wanted, but again I've just folded it down and just smoothing the glue out with my finger and gluing the sides. Now this one will take a little bit longer to dry. I'll need to weight it down just because it is the heavier paper, so the glue wasn't grabbing immediately. But that's basically it. So Nina also has a video for you this week, and I'll put a link to that below. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.